What is happening, YouTube? Thank you for joining me today. Say welcome to everyone. Act like I know what I'm doing, because I don't. Today, I wanted to take a minute here to give Russell another chance. If you saw last time, I did a video with him that unfortunately, because I had not, examined the video before I picked it, didn't realize it was actually from his podcast. He really didn't say a whole lot, which was kind of the entire point of the entire show was to do that. What we're going to do today is we're going to jump back over to Russell's website, his YouTube page, and there is a video that has got me super curious that I have actually been holding off on specifically so that we could take a look at this together. What I want to do now is I'm going to share this screen here, and then we're going to jump over and select this little bad boy. Now, there's two of them that had me really curious. So, this one is on Bill Gates, which, to be honest with you, is a super, super deep hole. So, I am probably going to, man, I so wish I could edit right now. Probably going to stick with this one. This is, like I said, this is Russel Brand, and this is You're Being Silenced. So, let's take a gander at this together. Now, unfortunately, this is not downloaded because I'm trying to play by the rules and not get in trouble. Unfortunately, we may have to deal with some ads, but hopefully it won't be too bad.
Going to comply. Do you feel you're being silenced by out-of-control government power? Chances are that that's exactly what's happening. I spoke to Brad Evans, who is a professor of philosophy at Bath University. We talk about Foucault, Nietzsche, the impossibility of communication between people from different political camps. How are we going to get out of this tribalism? Is there a way out of Puritanism?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, because literally this is another podcast review. So let's do the Bill Gates. I wanted to do that one anyway. I'll be honest.
Have you ever wondered how Bill Gates gets such positive media coverage?
Oh, Lord.
It's because he owns it, or at least funds large parts of it.
Bill! Let me pause him for a second. The reason why I have been using him and why I've brought him up in this episode as well is because of this format, of the way that he normally does his show. I hope you'll enjoy this as much as I am. And then anything he says that, strikes my fancy, you know me, I'll have to throw my 2 cents in. All right, here we go.
Oh, give us some money. We'll be a bit more positive on this channel. I'm only mucking around. Hello there, you 4.5 million raw wonders. Let us become refined together right now. If you're in the UK next year, between January and May, I'm performing all over the place. Have a look at the link in the description. In the meantime, let's have a look at the relationship between Bill Gates and the media. Bill Gates apparently gives a whole bunch of money to all sorts of different media outlets.
What?
Why would that be necessary? Alex McLeod, writing in the Grey Zone, said, a look at the database of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation reveals how the oligarch influencing the global pandemic response has bankrolled hundreds of media outlets to the tune of at least $390 million. I am not a conspiracy theory person. I'll tell you why, because I like to see proof and evidence of things.
Proof and evidence is the foundation of this entire channel.
That's what I'm interested in. Speculative stuff is interesting and we all get off on it. But I just like to look at things that there's evidence for. And then you can speculate how that might affect outcomes. Of course you can. But on this channel, we just read things that are demonstrable, like this. While other billionaires' media empires are relatively well known, the extent to which Bill Gates' cash underwrites the modern media landscape is not. After sorting through over 30,000 individual grants, Mint Press can reveal that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, BMGF, has made over $300 million worth of donations to fund media projects.
No, there's no conflict there. None.
Bloody hell, they could buy this one for about 500 quid. Recipients of this cash include many of America's most important news outlets, including, you'll be astonished to learn, CNN, NBC, NPR, PBS, and The Atlantic. Gates also sponsors a myriad of influential foreign organizations. The money is generally directed towards issues close to the Gates' hearts. Do your own joke. For
Uh-oh.
example, the Texas Tribune received millions to increase public awareness engagement of education reform issues in Texas. Given that Bill is one of the charter school's most fervent supporters, a cynic might interpret this as planting pro-corporate charter school propaganda into the media disguised as objective news reporting.
Okay, so see that right there is a major issue, is when propaganda is disguised as news. When it's not actually news, it's just somebody who happens to work for a news agency that is relaying information in a manner that leads you to believe that this is unbiased in any way, shape, or form, when clearly it ain't.
Generally speaking, if investments are being made, if grants and money is being handed over, there is an expectation. That's how commerce and trade operate. Most of the philanthropy and donations have some sort of explicit or implicit agenda embedded in them. The Gates Foundation has also given nearly $63 million to charities closely aligned with big media outlets, including nearly $53 million to BBC Media Action and $1 million to the New York Times Neediest Causes Fund. While not specifically funding journalism, donations to the philanthropic arm of a media player should still be noted. Gates continues to underwrite a wide network of investigative journalism centers as well, totaling just over $38 million.
And I'm sure this is evident to most people, but just in case, you do see how this buys influence. You do see how this would buy protection from investigation. You do see how this would get people to not question anything you say when you're throwing these kind of numbers at these people. These are huge numbers that he's spreading around to everyone. Do you think we're really going to get a fair shake on anything this or anyone who behaves in a similar manner? Do you think we're ever going to get a fair shake on who they actually are or what they're really doing?
The foundation also puts up money to directly train journalists all over the world in the form of scholarships, courses, and workshops. Today, it's possible for an individual to train as a reporter thanks to the Gates Foundation grant, find work at a Gates-funded outlet, and to belong to a press association funded by Gates.
Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
Who funded your education? That was Bill Gates. And where do you work for now? The Bill Gates funded CNN network. And what do you think about Bill Gates? I love you, Daddy. This is especially true of journalists working in the fields of health, education, and global development, the ones Gates himself is most active in, and where scrutiny of the billionaire's actions and motives are most necessary. Obviously, that is not evidence of any wrongdoing or malpractice. In fact, perhaps in a less cynical world, you'd say, well, it's just kind to train journalists, plucky journalists from the street, learning their journalism in the ghettos there, getting them a foot up on the ladder of the corporate media. But obviously, public opinion and PR are vital if you have an agenda. And if, as I have heard, Bill Gates also funds WHO, in fact, I think is the largest donor, then having positive media reporting is incredibly advantageous. That's what the profession of PR is. That's what lobbying is about, influencing people's opinion.
Yes. Yes. So what it gives you the ability to do is to bring information that is questionable and not have it questioned, because you have influence. When your buddies come up to you, your friends come up to you and say things, you're not likely to question them too hard if they are close to you or if they're important to you or if they're throwing a bunch of money your way. That might buy some suspended disbelief, I would think. I don't know. Somebody threw $38 million towards a company I was working for. It's very unlikely that that company is going to turn around and bite the hand that feeds it. So,
of course, you want to create awareness. There's no doubt about that. But to invest this much money in control or at least influence of the media feels like it would be unlikely to have no agenda attached to it.
And if we're wondering about his agenda, we all do have to remember that Bill did do a nice little TED talk that we could investigate on YouTube if you can find it.
While the Gates Foundation fosters an air of openness about itself, there is actually precious little public information about what happens to the money from each grant. A case in point is the BMGF's partnership with Viacom CBS. Media reports at the time noted that the Gates Foundation was paying the entertainment giant to insert information into its programming, and that Gates had intervened to change storylines in popular shows like ER and Law and Order SVU. Oh my God,
Excuse me?
what's wrong with the patient? I don't know, but it's certainly nothing to do with Bill Gates, who I think's a great guy. You're under arrest. What for? Well, certainly not the malpractices of Microsoft, who are a fantastic company. Why are you talking about Microsoft? I just like Microsoft. Why? I don't know, that little paperclip. I love that guy. He's very helpful. However, when checking BMFG's grants database, Viacom and CBS are nowhere to be found. The likely grant in question, totaling over $6 million, merely describing the project as a public engagement campaign aimed at improving high school graduation rates. For a tax-privileged charity that so very often trumpets the importance of transparency, it's remarkable how intensely secretive the Gates Foundation is about its financial flows.
That's the reason why I have this stunned look on my face. This is a nonprofit. Your books should be completely open to anyone who is ever given you a penny. How is it they're allowed to do this? I'm sorry.
Tim Schwab, one of the few investigative journalists who has scrutinized the tech billionaire, told Mint Press. Also not included are grants aimed at producing articles for academic journals. While these articles are not meant for mass consumption, they regularly form the basis for stories in the mainstream press and help shape narratives around key issues.
Well, and the article that literally these are the magazines and journals that's what they're talking about. These are journals that are geared towards a very specific group of people with when new information comes out. When new facts are discovered, when new discoveries are made, these are where these journals are where this information is disseminated. And look who is gaining control over what information makes it out to the media. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
The Gates Foundation has given far and wide to academic sources, with at least $13.6 million going towards creating content for the prestigious medical journal, The Lancet. Bloody hell. I mean, you don't even like to speculate as to what kind of influence might be purchased there. But you can see this is a very far-reaching web of influence that's being created, from journalist education to the media outlets to sort of bizarre influence in episodes of ER, which I'm going to watch back again and look for particular storylines that seem advantageous to Bill Gates. We finally
I've never watched either one of those shows. I might have to watch them.
cracked the case. Who was it? An informant down at the docks? No, it was this little paperclip and this handy little Windows 98. Hey, happy to be on the team, buddy. Get him out of here. No, I mean, I like you. And of course, even money given to universities for pure research projects eventually end up in academic journals and ultimately downstream in mass media. You see that yourself for your own consumption of media. A report out in such and such a thing. Well, if that report is in some way funded by a particular foundation, and that foundation has interests in other areas, then it's pretty easy to join the dots.
And one thing I will relay to you from my personal experience is I had a good friend of mine who was a research scientist for 30 years of her life and said that there is never a time in her entire career where she did not partake in a research study that did not have presupposed outcome determined before the first test was done. And as a general rule, the purpose for the study was to prove the outcome of the hypothesis, not to find out the truth, but to prove, because if you don't prove your hypothesis correct, you'll never get another grant, because it's about the money. You got to follow the money.
Academics are under heavy pressure to print their results in prestigious journals. Publish or perish is the mantra in university departments. Therefore, even these sorts of grants have an effect on our media. Neither these nor grants funding the printing of books or establishment of websites counted in the total, though they too are forms of media. In comparison to other tech billionaires, Gates has kept his profile as a media controller relatively low. Despite flying more under the radar, Gates and his companies have amassed considerable influence in media. We already rely on Microsoft-owned products for communication, e.g. Skype, Hotmail, social media, LinkedIn, and entertainment, Microsoft Xbox. Furthermore, the hardware and software we use to communicate often comes courtesy of Gates. Not only that, Microsoft owns stakes in media giants such as Comcast and AT&T, and the MS in MSNBC stands for Microsoft.
Do you guys remember that? Do you guys remember? Are those of us that are old enough to remember when that company formed? I mean, honestly, with a lot of these online news agencies, a lot of us were super excited that we were going to have complete and total transparency in the media. Oh, wow. I can't even say that now without laughing.
That the Gates Foundation is underwriting a significant chunk of our media ecosystem leads to serious problems with objectivity.
Yes, it
The
does.
foundation's grants to media organizations raise obvious conflicts of interest questions. How can reporting be unbiased when a major player holds the purse strings, wrote Gates' local Seattle Times in 2011. This was before the newspaper accepted BMGF money to fund its education lab. In fact, those purse strings we were on about, they don't matter that much. Who cares about purse strings? They just lead down to the purse. We can still ask the purse string holder whether or not we can open the purse. Can we open the purse, Bill? What are you going to say? But Bill Gates is a great guy. Open away at those purse strings.
My gosh.
Schwab's research has found that this conflict of interest goes right to the very top. 2 New York Times columnists have been writing glowingly about the Gates Foundation for years. Without disclosing, they also work for a group, the Solutions Journalism Network, that has received over $7 million from the tech billionaire's charity.
Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Oh my goodness, you got to be kidding. Oh, that's freaking incredible.
The main news again, Bill Gates, what a great guy. That glint in his eye, those lovely jumpers and sweaters that he wears, and his relationship with Melissa. And who doesn't like Windows? And his great work in the world of health all of a sudden out of nowhere. And his interest in agriculture. Bill Gates, everyone. I've written a little song, in fact, about Bill Gates is great. Oh, Bill Gates. Sorry, is this all strictly necessary? Yes, it is, if I want a new boat.
Coming in through the wilderness.
So sorry.
Earlier this year, Schwab also declined to co-report on a story about COVAX for the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, suspecting that the money Gates had been pumping into the outlet would make it impossible to accurately report on a subject so close to Gates's heart. Sure enough, when the article was published, it repeated the assertion that Gates had little to do with COVAX's failure, mirroring the BMGF's stance and quoting them throughout. Only at the very end of the more than 5,000-word story did it reveal that the organisation it was defending was paying the wages of its staff. There's nothing wrong with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or COVAX. It's all fantastic. Oh, and God, I can't believe I almost didn't mention it. One other little thing they did was they paid for me to do this right now. So let's hear it, guys.
I mean, I can't be the only person that sees like blatant hypocrisy in this. Can I? Am I alone? Tell me, puppies, am I alone?
I don't believe Gates told the Bureau of Investigative Journalism what to write. I think the Bureau implicitly, if subconsciously, knew that to find a way to tell this story that didn't target their funder. Yeah, because if someone's paying you to write something and the story you end up with is derisory, detrimental, and even sarcastic. Hey, did you spend that money we gave you to write that article? Oh, yeah, we did. What did you write? Well, we wrote that you've got too much interest in all these various investigative journalism outlets and that you're funding journalists and you're paying for these scientific papers. Give me that back. The biasing effects of financial conflicts are complex but very real and reliable, Schwab said, describing it as a case study for the perils of Gates-funded journalism. Unfortunately, many of these real criticisms of Gates and his networks are obscured by wild and untrue conspiracy theories about such things as inserting microchips in vaccines to control the population.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this a lot. The truth is bad enough. Let's just stick with the truth, stick with what we can prove, and get rid of conjecture and just stick with, the reality that we're working with here. It is more than bad enough. It's more than bad enough, right?
This has meant that genuine critiques of the Microsoft co-founder are often demonetized. It's not necessary to engage in speculation about conspiracies. It's unhelpful and it doesn't advance the cause of freedom of information, freedom of communication, having objective discussions about complex issues. And when you have the information of someone like Tim Schwab, who's investigated and demonstrated not financial impropriety, it's clearly not that, it's not illegal, but the assertion of influence that likely comes along with such significant investment, you can see already that that is reasonable and legitimate. And as is written by this writer, if you engage in the stuff that's speculative and potentially unfounded and untrue, then you don't get taken seriously, about the stuff that should be taken seriously. This should be taken seriously. Or if you listen to what Vandana Shiva talks about with Indian agriculture and its relationship with Microsoft and with Bill Gates, that stuff is empirically proven. It's demonstrable. Like Edward Snowden said on Under the Skin, our podcast, the worst conspiracies are happening in plain sight. The fact that you can see these things clearly unfolding, the stories we tell you every day, already being reported by legit investigative journalists, there's enough there to seriously query the nature of the systems under which we live.
And that is one of the reasons why I started doing this very show right here, is because there is a glut of information. There's a glut of things that we interact with and we're bombarded with on a daily basis. And it is clear that if you have to do more work now than what we used to have to do to get to the bottom of a story. When I was growing up, because I'm 52, because I'm an old fart, I knew what it was like to grow up, and we would be able to virtually all the time, you can just about trust what you were hearing because they still had journalists. They still had the man on the street. They still had people going out and investigating. And that's not what we have now. What we have now, and just do a little bit of homework, and you'll find out how few news agencies actually have field reporters. What they have is people who are reporting on things that are coming off the wire. And so that's not reporting. That's doing what I do, which doesn't take much skill, clearly, because I are doing it. So, yeah, let's go on.
This has meant that genuine critiques of the Microsoft co-founder are often demonetized and algorithmically suppressed, but we've not said any of those things. We've been very, very careful about what we've said, and we're certainly not aligning ourselves to any conspiracy theory or any unempirical, non-evidenced research stuff. YouTube, just for clarity, meaning that outlets are strongly dissuaded from covering the topic. The paucity of scrutiny of the world's fourth richest individual, in turn, feeds into outlandish suspicions. Gates certainly deserves it. Quite apart from his attempts to radically change African society and his investment in controversial chemical giant Monsanto, he is perhaps the key driver behind the American charter school movement, an attempt to essentially privatize the US education system. Charter schools are deeply unpopular with teachers' unions, which see the movement as an attempt to lessen their autonomy and reduce public oversight into how and what children are taught. Wow.
I'm going to disagree with that part on the charter school. It's a similar argument that the NEA has with homeschooling, but anything that challenges their authority to monopolize the education of your child without your consent is an affront to them. So honestly, I was really surprised, me personally. I spent a few years working in a teacher supply store. And so I'm not unfamiliar with the idea of the difference between charter schools and public schools and how they operate and the teachers they employ, because it's two completely different sets of educators. Believe me when I tell you that. As a general rule, though, what happened was this misinformation that was constantly coming out against these charter school systems. But see, the charters were independent. That is not what Bill is talking about. Bill is talking about a charter school system that is under his control and his tutelage that replaces the public school system. You dig what I'm saying? He's just changing codes. It's nothing's going to be any different, except that the information that your kids are getting are going to be what's approved by him. So nothing to see here, right?
Wow, controlling the children's minds now. Amazing. In most coverage, Gates donations are broadly presented as altruistic gestures. Yet many have pointed to the inherent flaws with this model, noting that allowing billionaires to decide what they do with their money allows them to set the public agenda, giving them enormous power over society. Philanthropy can and is being used deliberately to divert attention away from different forms of economic exploitation that underpin global inequality today, said Lindsay McGoey, professor of sociology at the University of Essex, where I'm from. None of this means that the organisation receiving Gates money, media or otherwise, are irredeemably corrupt, nor that the Gates Foundation does not do any good work in the world. We read that. But it does introduce a glaring conflict of interest whereby the very institutions we rely on to hold accountable one of the richest and most powerful men in the planet's history are quietly being funded by him. This conflict of interest is one that the corporate media have largely tried to ignore, while the supposedly altruistic philanthropist Gates just keeps getting richer and laughing all the way to the bank. He might not actually laugh on the way to the bank, and he probably actually doesn't bother going himself. Probably have his own bank in his house with people working in it whose education he paid for. Is it right that Bill Gates...
Sorry, folks, my dogs are acting up in the background. Forgive me if you can hear that.
Has that amount of influence, that amount of control? Is that something you want? Do you think it benefits you and the planet at large to have that much influence exerted by one individual through one foundation? I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comments below. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, pass it around, share it around with other.
So we'll go ahead and stop that there. So one thing that I do want to bring out here to just kind of wrap this up and to kind of keep this at the half-hour mark is what we're when we are looking at the kind of influence that this handful, and I've mentioned this before, when you're looking at the circle of influence that a handful of people have in this world over what we see, what we hear, what we eat, what we wear, you realize that it is literally almost like that freedom is just the illusion. Is they're giving you the illusion of choice, but they're not really giving you the illusion. It's not really choice. It's you get to choose to either do without or take what they give you. And so that's not an acceptable option on my terms as far as that goes. So let me go ahead. I'm sorry. I guess you already know it's Russell, and I left it up the whole time again. That's why it says dork. See there, it says dork right there because that's what I are. So I hope you enjoyed this today. I hope you learned something. I learn something every time I watch Russell. I really do. He has a small team, I believe it's like him and a couple other people, and they do basically daily content like this. So if it's something you're interested in on the rebroadcast, I will have a link to his channel down below. A heads up, fair warning, it is not kid friendly. So he's got a very colorful vocabulary, and this topic is pretty low key. So I figured he'd be all right. But sometimes he gets going. Sometimes I say bad words too. So it's I don't know. You get mad enough. I guess that just kind of happens. So if this is content that you enjoy, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you have got a video that you'd like me to take a look at, funny, aggravating, whatever, leave that in the comments as well, because I'd love to take a look at it. Always looking for something interesting. I am going to be putting together things that are a kind of like a series. There's a topic that has become near and dear to my heart that I wanted to really kind of put some pieces together for you so I could come and bring you kind of a presentation, kind of a story format, as it were. So, all right, guys. Well, it's coming up on time. And so I'm going to go ahead and kill this early so you can get back to doing what you're doing. All right. Love you guys. Thanks for stopping in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.